hits the hammer. If you call a roll, please.
Ted Carlson.
Here.
Terrence Kelly.
Here.
David Nesbitt.
Here.
Keith Silver.
Here.
Steve Strom.
Here.
Dee Ennis, Deputy Municipal Attorney, is here. Linda Richardson, Administrative Hearing Officer, is here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Dee, would you like to speak before we approve the agenda?
Yeah, and this is just with respect to the order. We have pending a motion for consideration by Mr. Cloninger, and then also the matter by Dick Trainee, besides all the other stuff. And so what I just arranged for with Lisa is at 12:30, maybe handle the Cloninger matter, and at 1 o'clock Dick Trainee will be here. That will give him the 1 to 2 o'clock slot. And in the meantime, we can be doing the other smaller matters in and around that. Now, I did not, by the way, I got the telephone number for this room, and I have not given it to Mr. Cloninger. I do have his cell phone number if we need it. We may not need it. So, okay. And that's it.
So with that, keeping that in mind, if you review the agenda, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Anybody opposed? Nobody opposed. The agenda is approved. We have the minutes of the March 12th meeting. So for only those that were attending the March 12th meeting, that would have been David and Ted. Do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Well, it passes. Do we have any appearance requests other than what you've discussed, Dee?
No,
Okay.
not that I'm aware.
Any special orders of business or executive session at this point?
No.
Okay, so under new business, I'd like to make just a short comment before we get to the new business. The approval that we gave to Assemblyperson Amy Demboski got approved 11-0 last night at the Assembly. Her modification to the code to basically the people have to pay back, any elected officials have to pay back on a percentage basis. Got approved unanimously last night. So under this disclosure forms under 7A, it appears like you pulled one aside for us, the top of the first one.
No. Yeah, it is. Sorry. I thought it was the last one, but it's the first one.
That's pretty clear. And this is PTA. PTA has been busy. Chamber of Commerce. Whoa.
Which I think is good, because that's the proper
Well, it's
way.
exactly
so.
what it should happen, but yeah, that's just... Okay. Other than the letter for Jordan, does anybody want to pull any of the others aside?
The letter for who? Jordan.
Matt Jordan, the first one.
Check. That's the only one that's in there.
Okay. So you'll have me to sign that before I get out of here?
Yes.
All right.
I have a lot of them.
And we have this disclosure by elected officials. None. Disclosure forms by press and economic interest of appointed members of public boards, commissions, or other municipal bodies.
You'll see it ends with the updated report. I was able to get all but one of the Assembly members, and that's the one who I assume is still in Africa. Bruce Webb. He's on the Board of Adjustment.
Oh, no, he's actually back.
Is he back?
Yes, barely.
Okay, then I may have missed him, and I can get him now. But he's also on the Board of Adjustment, and I have sent out several emails recently to the Board of Adjustment and haven't gotten a response from him. But if he's just now back, I'll try again, and then we'll have 100% for Assembly boards and commissions.
Well, that's good. I don't, is anything, I don't see anything that raises any eyebrows here.
What about Mike Burns? There's not a mark there for Mike Burns at all. What's the status there?
Oh, on this
Oh,
report?
no, he's there. He's Board of Equalization.
Yeah.
His was received 214. It's the one above that where there's
There's
nothing.
just no
Bruce
X
Webb.
next to his name,
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, there's no X. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
he's got one in, so I
He's
think
good.
mark that.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the second part, the B part of this is, it just says C item 8C2 and 8C3, and you don't have to see that right now. I purposely diverted that under another item because it's something you guys might want to talk a lot about, so I didn't want to bog us down here in the beginning. But that's about possibly a code change, a code rewrite to this section. Because of the little bit of a hitch that we got into with the Assembly members filing those disclosures as annual supplements. So we can talk about that later.
And they have asked for that.
Okay, so it'd probably be best, is there anything else under 7A that we need to discuss?
Well, can I get a motion to approve?
That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
Can we get a motion to approve under new business 7A?
Move 7.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any opposed? Hearing none. And then 7B is all these review notices to intent to solicit, to respond to public solicitation. Was it, you said was I catching some, there was other information you want to provide to us, or just?
No, that was about the present economic disclosures. So.
Can I say, a lot of these are on bid on foreclosed property, and this form doesn't provide enough information. I don't think, I'm not sure it does these different forms to figure that out. So it's one of our employees, we have an employee or a board member, and their spouse or someone is going to bid on one of our foreclosure departments, or foreclosed properties. And, for instance, this first one, Denise Cottrell, I think her husband Robert is a board
doesn't
or
say on-
commissioner or something.
No,
I
she
know-
is an elected official.
Yeah, she's the chair of that.
Oh, okay, she's the
Yeah.
chair of the LRSA. So we don't know what property she's bidding on.
Does that matter?
Well, in this pic, if it's a LRSA, does it matter? I mean, I understand if she serves maybe on the Board of Equalization or possibly something that would review a property. What? Planning and zoning potentially might be an issue. And I know there's a whole bunch of boards I'm not mentioning or thinking about here. Or works in the tax department, and this is one that's being foreclosed on because of taxes. Is that what we would assume this is, a tax foreclosure?
Yes.
So, out of curiosity, how are we supposed? And I appreciate your information, but how are we to know that?
Yeah, and I guess they are checking off a box on these that under 10 that neither I nor a member of my immediate family serve in a position that could influence municipal action. So they are saying that with respect to development, approval, or award. So they're not involved in that. Well, they're not
And
part
who
of the real
serves?
estate department, basically.
Yeah, because this guy serves at AFD. The other one was listed office. What is that?
Are they possibly going to bid on multiple properties, like just go to the auction and see if they can get any of them?
Yes, they have a list, and several of them. We have quite a few of them, so I've been helping with a lot of these. They have a list, and some of them are taking 3 and 4, 5 and 6 copies because they plan on bidding on several things. So,
So on the second page, the designated ethics officer has to sign, and is that Keith? Is that why all these come to us, or?
Or
is
would
it-
it, no, it wouldn't necessarily be me. That would be like the ethics officer of their department, or D, right, D?
Yeah, I'm the head one.
Yeah.
We used to have a very active subgroup, and we just haven't done that of late because you have to retrain all of them.
So to
And
me,
so-
that's where, you know, that kind of issue could resolve itself. I mean, if the designated ethics officer, you know, certifies it with a signature, then to me, that would help me.
Well,
I'm
then-
like, well, you know, someone's already looked at it from an ethical perspective, and
Well, I'm not necessarily trying to give any more work to D because
Well, we
well,
need
but
to
there's
do
my
that, though. I
point. My
think it
point
would
is
be,
there's a spot on the
Yeah.
form for
Yeah,
it.
it's either-
So
Kelly
if we're not
Cass-
going to have them sign it, take that part off the form.
Kelly Cass didn't go through that step possibly because the department has them.
well, I had the same thought as Steve when I was going through these forms. If no one's going to fill out this part with their designated ethics officer because they come and say, I don't know who mine is, we don't have one, you know, et cetera, can we take it off the form? But, so I went through code and did some research, and we cannot. It's in code that it has to be signed by quote-unquote designated ethics officer. So, well, I don't know who it is, and that was my question.
Delinda has not been delegated those
Do we
duties
have
yet,
a
right?
list
So if
of
you go
those
3 in,
we do
people?
Brogdon Nowak has the form, in my opinion, filled out appropriately.
Yeah, if Lance Alpern is his designated.
Well, that's his supervisor.
His
but then he-
supervisor, right?
yeah.
So I think he
But then
was
also
like,
the-
I don't know who my ethics officer is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Somebody's
well, I-
supervisor.
somebody signed it.
Yeah.
So
This unfortunately brings up a larger problem that I have gotten approval from the mayor to designate a number of the old group. Half of them have left, are gone of the old. It was sort of not per department. It was sort of areas and people. And so I went through the exercise about a year ago to ask the mayor, because he appoints, can he designate some more? Here are the names. Can you please designate them? And he said yes. So we haven't had training with him. And so basically, I think it's just a matter of.
And I'll just say, this got highlighted in this process, that there's a problem with the form or a problem with information. And so there's a part 7 to this where we're going to discuss, you know, how we go about making this clearer. What I've done with these that came in without an ethics officer signature is to let these people know they're published online, and there's a little line underneath that says pending approval by the Municipal Board of Ethics, to let them know that the ethics board will sign off on these or approve or
Okay,
disapprove these.
I mean, if there's somebody within
this
the
time.
yeah, I understand. If there's somebody within the city or municipality, excuse me, such as a designated ethics officer who can handle it, I don't want to hold somebody up because the timing could actually be such
Right.
that tomorrow one of these things comes up. They do it, and we may not. You know, we're not going to meet until next month,
Right.
and they could end up missing out. I don't want them to miss out on the opportunity.
And we need area-wide ethics officers, either because, for instance, one of these things was delegated to me last time, and so I have to call that person. I'm not familiar with the area, so we really do need the area-wide, and so let me get that done.
and it's April 16th for all these foreclosed
Yeah.
properties is when the solicitation, the
Well,
submissions.
I think we can substitute in as the ethics board. That's okay, but it does
Right.
highlight an ongoing
There's
issue.
not always going to be a meeting
Yeah.
that comes up right before, because the deadline for this publication is actually today. So if we had this meeting tomorrow, this wouldn't have been a good fix, you know, for all of these people that put in for today. All of them are pretty. There's one that I want to ask you to look at, and the one is Novak, Bogdan, and Anna Novak. Anna works in our office. She is the business licensing official, and her husband Bogdan works in IT. So they were advised to both fill out a form, which they were happy to comply with. But for publication, there's a $15 fee for publishing this on the website. And they were prepared to pay two $15 fees, but didn't like the idea that they had to do that since they're really one person. They just both happen to be working at the municipality. So my question was, I accepted her check and we put a hold on it. Do we have to charge them $15 each for the publishing, or can I publish this as one all together as one publication and then charge them $15 for one because they really are acting together. They're husband and wife.
So if I bid on if I wanted to do this, I'd have to fill one of these forms out?
Yes,
Does
and
my wife have
your
to fill
wife
one
would
out?
too. And
So
then,
would I get the $15 reduction, or would I have to pay?
well, that's the question before the board.
And where on this form does it say my wife would have to fill one out?
Well, because she is works for the
They're both
municipality.
employees,
Yeah,
so
both
it
employees.
does.
Oh, that's right. I'm a bad example. You're right.
Yeah.
Let's go with somebody else. I forgot. Yeah, she's
Well,
a teacher.
okay, so
So-
I would defer to my attorneys here as
Yeah.
to whether or not you would consider a husband and a wife, one entity, or because they're both employees, they have separate, and what if one works in a department that's an issue and the other one doesn't, so.
Well, my question, what I was trying to get at was, what if you have one person that works for the municipality and the spouse doesn't? Does the spouse that doesn't work for the municipality have to fill one of these out?
No.
So,
Might be a conflict of business.
Doesn't it retain that, when you fill one out, you say, does you or anyone in your household have a conflict?
I'm not sure
Yeah.
they should.
And so, if it's, they're obviously in the
Well,
same
yeah, because
household.
eight says, neither I or a member of my immediate family is defined in AMC 1.15.110, work for the administrative department awarding or administering a solicitation.
Yeah.
But that's just for that department,
But
not any other department.
It seems to me that maybe they should have just done a single joint form and had both of their supervisors sign the same sheet of paper. Because if the,
And I see what you're saying, but the form is actually tailored towards a single person. So we could have put on everything Anna and Bogdan, and here's the signature of IT, and here's the signature of Barbara Jones. But then it bogs down the form, whereas they could use two forms, but if I just do it in one publication, one form, what happens right now is that I publish online the front page, the back page, and the receipt for each person. Front page, back page, receipt for each person. So why couldn't I do front page, back page, and receipt for both
You're just scanning.
in one scanning? And the fee is for publication. So if I'm only doing one publication, can I charge one fee?
Sorry. Excuse me, if I went down there and want to bid on two different pieces of property, is that $30 then or still 15?
Still 15 in this case because this is one event.
No, but if I just want to bid on 2 or 3 different pieces of property, is it per property or per?
It's per event,
Per bidding event.
per bidding event.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
So-
even though it's 4 or 5, well then,
Right.
to me it would, it's one,
Well, they're acting together as one.
right,
Bidder.
and it should only.
What?
Yeah, they're putting in one bid.
One, yeah. Well, not necessarily one bid, but whatever bids they put in, they'll be
they're
acting
doing
as a
jointly
unit.
an area type of-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what drives the fee?
Publication.
Where is it in the code somewhere that the municipality will charge a $15 fee? What are the guidelines for the charging the fee?
Yes, it's
Where at?
the fee. I don't know if it says $15, but it says a fee.
So do
then-
you know where it's at in here?
No.
No.
There's a table. There's a table,
'Cause
but it's not in our ethics
Well, just
code.
reading the context around the fee in the code might help inform it. Because it might be ambiguous enough, or it might be very clear.
If Lisa can publish it as one document,
Yeah.
and the fee is for publishing,
Yeah.
then I would think you'd be able to do it for $15.
Yeah.
How often does this come up?
Not hardly at all.
I mean,
I was
I'm
gonna say,
sympathetic
yeah.
to the one fee. I'm just trying to see, like Steve, there's got to be something that governs. You've got some sort of chart or something that governs.
It's
It's
not
in here
the-
somewhere that there's a.
Well, I don't see acquisition of economic interest is
1.15.025E1. It just says you'll file one of these forms. I don't think it mentions the fee.
Yeah.
So, I guess my recommendation is it's such a small matter. We have so many more important things that we defer to the staffer here that is explaining to us. It doesn't take her much more time to do it if this is a sort of unique situation. Because I have a feeling the fee schedule is generated by the clerk's office.
And it's
My
not
cons-
in our ethics code, it's in code, and I don't have that here.
My concern is that if you publish it as one item, is it clear to people viewing the website that this is one item representing the filings from two different people?
I think so. I think it's really clear.
it's clearer.
It's clearer, because
Yeah,
it comes
'cause
up
you
as
don't-
one event, and then
That's
it would
right.
be A and B Novak. And then when you open it up, it opens up to everything together with a receipt at the end. So it's, even clearer.
That way you wouldn't have to mix and match names from different applications.
Right.
Right.
Because it would, if we had two separate publishers, it would look as though there were two separate pieces.
Right now, that's what it looks like on the website, because I've had to put A Novak, B Novak, so it looks like two different
Okay.
People.
people
Well,
when they're acting together.
I agree with our staff attorney that that's something your office can work out as to how you're going to handle. Because if it's not in our code, we won't really have any jurisdiction over that,
Okay.
as I understand it.
But I do like keeping two separate disclosures,
That's not a
because then,
problem.
as individuals, you can, that's your disclosure,
Go forth and conquer.
Okay.
So do we have a motion to accept under 7B? We have a motion and a second. Any opposed?
Who did that? I'm sorry, I missed it.
That was Terry.
Terry.
And I second.
Okay. And so are you allowing me to then go have Keith sign all of these and then replace that second page and publishing with the signed designated ethics officer?
Sure, we can take care of that for now.
Take-
But I would, for the future, I'd recommend
Let's
that
get that
once you can
together.
get your officials in place.
I think it'd be done pretty quickly.
'Cause I'm just
Just do it.
concerned, as we've discussed, that there could be a gap. And somebody would not be able to respond to a bid because they couldn't get somebody to sign off.
Right. And before we move away from B, there is a number 7 to B, and that's to review the form. Linda did some work for us. So if you look in 7B past the goldenrod, you'll see the form as it exists right now. And then what I've done is I've done some research for you, and I've just isolated the parts of the code that deal with what needs to be disclosed on the form, and then I've put a number by that we've taken care of all of these things. But it just shows you what has to be on the form. And then this is Linda's with the highlights are some of the things that she thought maybe needed to be changed. So you've got sort of 3 documents there.
What's the first form without the highlight?
This is as is
Okay.
right now. And then I liked, this came after the fact, after I looked at Linda's, I liked what she did on some of the summary stuff. But then I was looking at some present economic interest disclosure forms, and they had, because you're asking twice, you don't have anybody in your family that works with this department, or I'm solving this conflict by doing this. They had that on the form, and then underneath they had the signature of the supervisor. Then they had concur, designated ethics officer, so that you don't have these big sections where everybody's filling out the same thing. That might be something that would be more helpful too. Do you agree,
Just to
Linda?
streamline.
Just put concur instead of adding that whole this whole section here where you're asking the same questions all over again.
Okay. Oh, paperwork reduction now?
Yeah, well, it just it takes. This is
I
so
love how the
confusing.
notification you get.
You wouldn't believe the people come in that are so confused by this form. They don't even like to even begin filling it out. So I kind of go through it step by step with them, and then they get to the back and they go, "Oh, I'm forget." They just ignore it. They just look at it and go, "I'm not doing it." So
Too many lines.
Well, to that extent, I may have made it more complicated rather than less because I used bigger words. But like, for example, on number 3, I propose to, and I made it the solicitation respondent proposes to, because if it's like your spouse and not you, then, you know, if your spouse is doing the bidding, that sort of thing, you know, it's not necessarily the individual filling out the form.
No, I agree with that. I don't, it may be more words, but I think it's more accurate. And then for, down at number 10, you see,
And I tried to make that so that it made people sit and actually, and just say, instead of just pencil whipping no conflicts, to actually think, well, gee, what are the possible conflicts?
What would we do if there were?
and so in this case, if they had none, they would actually write in the word none instead of just checking a box because it's easier.
Right.
Okay.
But it kind of suggests the assumption that conflicts do exist.
So do we need 11 and then go on to 12? I have submitted this notice to a supervisor and designate for municipal apartment, and then you take it for one of those to sign it?
I
Well,
don't,
the concept behind number 12 is, okay.
Well, actually, I was
11
looking to
is
get rid of 11.
11 is to remind the individual on the front page that they're not done yet. So number 11
put
is
see
like,
other
this
side.
is the last thing the individual needs to do. Take it to your supervisor and your agent, And so then they're like, huh? And then that's the next page. It's kind of like
And they're like, huh? And I was like, ugh. And you're like,
baby feet, you know,
stop it, I don't want to have to put all that in the minutes.
you know, just kind of like, because the way it was before, you know, the person signs and they think, okay, I'm done, and they
Yeah.
don't turn the
That's
page
right.
over.
That's why I like.
And so this
Yeah.
was kind of like, and here is the last thing for you. Oh, I got to take it to my supervisor in the Dale.
Yeah, that's what I liked about you putting this at the
Well,
end.
are they done if they're not a municipal employee, elected official, or appointed official, but they're the spouse of one of those people? Because if they're the spouse of one of those people, but they're not a municipal employee, an appointed official, or an elected official, they have to fill it out anyway,
Right, and the spouse.
Just
So my husband Noah wants to
bid on foreclosed property.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does he have to fill it out?
I would fill it out.
Why would
and
you?
say,
Why would you fill it out?
She would say that he's buying this stuff.
Right.
Because they are an entity. Whatever is acquired by one of them is acquired by both.
and
But-
I would fill it out, and then I would take it to D or Dennis, and I would explain, well, I knew about this foreclosed property because in a hearing I had with land use, they talked about how this property's been an eyesore and they've done all these things to clean it up, and now it owes X amount of back taxes. And that's how I thought about buying this foreclosed property. And so it is a conflict of interest, but I'm managing it because my bid is going to be a sealed bid, and so is everybody else's, and I don't have any insider knowledge.
This form's kind of confusing. So, to me, I mean,
Isn't it a-
so
It needs work
basically,
still.
no, well, like I look at number 8, and so I don't know. It's not very clear.
When you have to
So-
look at it from the perspective of the municipal employee, elected official, or
Right.
appointed official, because the spouse, even if the spouse is the one that has the business, isn't the one filling out this form. It's the employee. So it's always from the perspective of the employee.
So I guess, so why do you? Who cares about your immediate family? Because if they are, they have to fill it out anyway. If they're a municipal employee, if they're not, then they wouldn't. The code wouldn't apply
Well,
to them.
the
I
code
guess is
applies
what-
if their immediate family
Is bidding.
works for that unit.
And but they would have. We just already established that they both have to fill the form out anyway.
Well, they would only have to fill out the form if they're going to bid jointly.
Yeah.
right? I mean, if only one is going to bid, actually,
Yeah.
David, that would be illegal, but I mean, could a married
Yeah.
couple bid individually?
Yeah.
If they did, then you could have a situation where that
So,
would be relevant.
so if that's true, then could a non-municipal employee spouse bid independently and not have to fill this form out?
The spouse would still have to fill out the form.
Why?
So here's the situation, and this is the tip.
Because
Why
it's
would your husband
imputed.
have to fill the form out? if
No,
was
he
gonna-
doesn't,
Because he's in the immediate family.
Even if he's bidding independently, I have to fill out the form.
Right. So it's okay. So here's me. I'm a municipal employee, and say my husband is going to buy, let's do something unrelated to foreclosed property. My husband is going to bid on a contract to build a new Superdome here. Okay, so I work for the municipality. My husband doesn't work for the municipality, but he's going to bid on this contract. Well, I'm in his immediate family, so I have to fill out the contract, and I have to say somebody in my immediate family is going to bid on the Superdome. I don't work for that department, and I just want to let you know my husband's going to be bidding on it. So it's always from the perspective of the employee, even though I have nothing to do with his business. I don't have any ownership in it. Or sometimes it says, what is your percent ownership in it?
Or here's another example. I have a 19-year-old son who lives at home,
Okay.
who's looking for a job. If he wanted to bid for a taxi cab license, I would have to fill one of these out.
Linda would, not the son. Because Linda would
This
have to
is my
say,
immediate
someone in
family.
my immediate family is going to bid on a taxi license.
And I happen to know from my job as a hearing officer that prior bids for taxi licenses have gone for $50,000 to $100,000. So I happen to know how much a bid might be.
Does it make sense?
Yeah. I mean,
I do have
I don't know
another question.
how much we need to spend on this. How long has the form been in place? It is kind of confusing. Right?
Oh, I guess, just a couple of housekeeping things. I'm with Keith. I would get rid of 11,
Okay.
and then you'll have to do something about where they sign, because right now it looks like that's in section 13, but
Oh,
section
so it
13
needs to
says
make
this
it
should be
a-
filled out by
make
the
it
ethics
different.
office. Yeah, so
So-
you make that either 14 or if you get rid of 11.
Then
um,
make 12, 11, 13, 12, and then make the certification
This-
13.
That's right.
Another number, okay.
And-
At least so, because otherwise it gets lost in the
11
wash. I had to
altogether.
look 2 or 3 times to say, like, well, where exactly does the person sign, right? And it wasn't, because I kept thinking this was in 13. I'm like, oh, here it is down here. You had it highlighted. Had it not been highlighted.
You could potentially put on the bottom of the page, see other side.
I would try to get all of the applicant information on the front page.
I'm with you. That's exactly what I thought of. I thought of, can I take my
Yeah.
little administration box, put it on the front so that I can free up this page, put all the application stuff on the front and all the what I am verifying or certifying and my supervisor is certifying, all that on the back, so that when a supervisor looks at this, they're not going, you know what I mean? And then, you know what, so that it applies to their signature.
I got a question. If I'm an applicant and I come in and I don't happen to have a copy of 1.15.025E, 0301I, and 035M
What?
with me, how do I know?
Carry your little...
Yes, right.
Just
Or
ask for your
110. Do we
passage.
have copies available from the review that, or do we give them a copy of, just a stapled documents that this is the applicable sections so that they can review them?
We do not have that ready to go. We can always print that out. But that was actually one of my questions because I've seen other forms that we have that have the code as like a reference, like on the back page or
Because
a
we're
third
saying in
page.
accordance with this code, you got to do this, and then we're also saying member family as defined, but then they can't see the code to see, well, does my family fit into that definition?
Just have a copy of that code
I
at
can
the
make a
front
copy
desk.
of the code as part of the form,
Just have it at the front desk.
or just have
You
it
know, or
available.
maybe just a review copy under
Okay.
plastic pieces, so that
Yeah.
somebody can review it at the front desk. So somebody says, I don't know what this is. Can I look at it? I agree. I think it'd be better, just like you have one of these books for us.
Okay.
I know if I was coming in, I wouldn't know what those. We have a working knowledge of the code, but I'm willing to bet that the majority of the people responding wouldn't.
Okay, so for next time, would you all want me to make another form that looks like everything we talked about right now, including Linda's, and just bring it in for review.
Or you could email it to us so we can make our changes, and when we get here, we know.
Well, no,
So we don't-
yeah, and I'll email it out like I do things a week before. And so did you like the way she summarized the signature block for the supervisors at the top, number 11? Instead of having a separate line for everyone, she put it all together on one.
Right.
And I think
so
it's kind of
'cause-
brilliant because they're
well,
always
it
signing
looks
the
as
wrong
though
line.
on the old one, it looks like everyone has to sign off.
Yeah.
If you don't read it carefully.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
So
that's
I'll make
good.
the changes and we'll bring it back for review. Oh, and then it gets to that C part, because I don't want to let this go because this has been like a bane of my existence for like 2 weeks now. The ethics officers for by department, can we get somebody that could like provide that list?
Yes.
Because people come in and go, I don't know who
Yeah,
mine is.
yeah.
Okay. Well, is that?
That will be me.
Okay. Thank you, Dee.
She'll start
And then
assigning
I
people.
can-
No, I have a list of names, but I'll
I
bring
can
them for
start doing
training.
training as soon as you say go.
Okay. We have a number of area-wide designated officers, and only I think one of them has already left since being designated or not.
Okay.
Okay, so if, you gonna keep?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Well, do we need to approve all these first? No, we don't need,
We already did that.
Okay, move on.
Okay, this is with respect to the motion for reconsideration filed by Mr. Cloninger, and I can fill the other board members in a little bit. I've asked Ron Haddon to be here, who's the department head for purchasing, and you heard from him briefly. Number one, Mr. Cloninger did file a motion for reconsideration. I wanted this involved both a factual determination and a legal determination, and for the board members who weren't here, factually, Mr. Cloninger, who works in the purchasing department, he filed a notice of intent to solicit business. His wife wanted to bid on this sidewalk vendor program, which is something the municipality basically leases or rents out space, 8 spots or something per year, and it's a competitive process. And he noted that he worked for purchasing. The rest of the board sort of vetted, I think, all the, did he have any unfair advantage? Did he have any insider knowledge? Was he managing any conflicts? And came to where it was comfortable that he passed the smell test in terms of conflict of interest. But then we turned to the next page. David brought us back to the code, and there was a section that said, however,
Where are you
and
at?
this is 1.15.025 E5A. However, once you get through all of the smell test and vetting for conflict of interest, then you have to go, and it says award of a municipal contract shall not be made to a person or entity unless neither the municipal employee nor a member of the employee's immediate family works for the administrative department awarding or administering the contract. Okay, now, to eliminate one part of this, administering the contract, these permits are administered by right of way. I'll just tell you that. So that's out. We don't need to worry about that one. What was catching all of us up was what does the word awarding mean? Because in fact, purchasing is involved in the paperwork process. I wrote a memo that said, I think you're interpreting it too broadly, that it should not include somebody in purchasing. 3 people said, you haven't convinced us. Julia felt the same. She was going to be here today, but it was not available. And I think maybe if I can explain 5 minutes more what the procurement process is, that might be helpful. Because remember, I had to leave that meeting, and we'd already been meeting for 2 hours.
And if I may, can I just very briefly, my understanding is that just for clarification, because we were here, Mr. Cloninger does work for purchasing.
Yes.
I mean, he is on the department. My
Yes.
understanding is he was removed from the vendor program,
Anything to do with it.
so he
yes.
works in another area of purchasing, but
Yes.
still works for purchasing.
Exactly.
My understanding also from him or from whoever talked last time that it is purchasing, a member of purchasing or a member of that vendor program or whatever it is, who actually sits in a room. They come into a room. I say the people who are soliciting
The bids,
the
we were
bids,
responding to
they all sit in a room together, and a member of purchasing opens the bids one by one, and then awards that contract to the highest bidder.
Okay.
That is the process of sitting in the room doing
Well,
it together.
they're sitting in the room. I think that
Right.
the issues are they awarding or
Okay.
they opening up a bid, and that's why I wanted to explain a little bit more about.
No, that's
the
fine. I just
bid.
want to make sure for
Yes.
the purposes of those
For
who weren't
those who
here
weren't
last
here.
time, that was our background leading into
Yes.
the definition of award and definition of contract and definition, and
Right.
that Mr. Cloninger worked for the.
He
how we
does
ended
work
up-
for the department for
Right.
sure.
Okay, so I just want to have that kind of foundational background, and then go.
Okay, so just there, with respect to, for instance, the competitive process, procurement is the point of contact for the entire city with the exception of foreclosure sales for essentially all competitive process,
Correct.
right? So, and that's because they want a contact person and they want to equal the playing field. They don't want people to be able to call directly to the department and give them additional information. Everybody has to deal with purchasing for all of our competitive stuff, and as a matter of fact, are non-competitive for invoicing. But let's keep it at the competitive level. 3 different types of requests for proposal. So you want someone to be your indigent defense counsel. An ITP invitation to bid, big construction stuff, and then the request for a quote, which is a smaller thing, which is what this was. So these, I call them public documents, are sent out to the public. Now these are generated generally by the administering department. So RFP, Department of Law generated the RFP for the Indigent Defense Council. We give it to purchasing, and they may say, no, you didn't dot this I, but they don't correct substance. Same with ITB, they have, a bunch of engineers and everything, figure out all the millions of, 4,000, what do they call us? We always fight over them. Specifications, how could I forget that word? And the same for a request for quote. Now, Ron and Mr. Haddon, was this request for quote, you did have one in the sidewalk vendor program, and that was composed of a right-of-way person, yourself, I think, and it was not Mr. Cloninger.
No, Mr. Cloninger was not involved in the preparation of the abbreviation for request for quote is called an RFQ.
Dee, just for the record, can we introduce
Oh, I'm
our
sorry.
guest? I just want to make sure we know.
No, my name is Ron Haddon. I'm the purchasing director for the municipality of
Okay,
Anchorage.
and did we speak to you over the phone at our last meeting?
We did.
You were the voice on the end of it. Okay, just want to make sure.
I forgot, it was just
Yes.
the voice at the end.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Right. And I wanted him to correct if I make anything,
Yeah.
any misstatements about the procurement process. So the document that went out in this case, and I read it and I can give people a copy, but it doesn't say, it's purchasing gobbledygook. This document was sent out to the public, was not generated by Mr. Cloninger. Occasionally purchasing will sit on one of these groups just to help us out because we don't know what we're doing. And that again is why purchasing is here, is because every department doesn't know how to generate these documents. There are some template. At any rate, then the different public documents call for you have to respond at a certain time. This one did that. In the larger process, like the RFP, when I was selecting for Department of Law, the indigent defense firm, we get a little committee together of whoever we pick to make a recommendation, and we come up. And there's very strict rules. We can't talk to the people outside. There all these equal the playing field rules, and then we tell purchasing, this is who we select. Please send out a notice of intent to award. So in your bigger ones, the department is clearly in the middle of it. And purchasing really is paper openers and dotting the I's, making sure that the rest of us are complying. Because I don't know if you noticed that Indigent Defense Council, that all hit the fan because there was one particular process that maybe we didn't follow. And that's what happens when you don't have someone from purchasing hitting you over the head saying, because we attorneys thought we
Are you talking about
knew
the
more.
Denali Law Group?
Yes.
Oh, I heard all about that.
We thought we knew more than purchasing. So, at any rate, invitation to bid is much the same. There's a selection committee. You've heard all about the port selection committee. Those are committees. These processes also end up generally in front of the assembly at some point. Request for a quote. There wasn't a selection committee because, and I guess it's the same as ITB. Both of those, the low bidder wins. There's no discretion there.
The high
Is that
bidder.
correct?
In this case,
Oh, I'm sorry.
The high bidder,
High
yeah.
bidder. I'm sorry.
yeah, in this case, it was a high bidder.
Yeah, the
You'd
high
really
bidder
cause a
wins.
problem if it was the low bidder.
Yeah. Okay, the high bidder wins. There's no discretion. So this quote, which is generated by the department generally right away, it goes out to the public. request for quote, the public marches back in. All bid openings are held at purchasing, aren't they? You don't hold them anywhere else in the city. So all of them are handled through purchasing. They do this, the person hands them the bid and, okay, you're high, you win. Now, when you say you win, okay, you are now eligible to go to the next step, which is getting your additional permits, and if you do that, then quote, right away, then grants the permit.
So they would have to go to DHSS.
Right.
And right away.
Right.
And which
Right.
one do they typically go first? Does it make any difference?
Typically, they'll go to DHHS first to get a food handler's permit.
Okay.
Now, Jack Frost, whose department is code enforcement, he did just today send in a little memo, and
It's in your
unrequested
packet.
by me, by the way, that said, hey, the purchasing department's only role is to facilitate the bid process. They do not have the authority to issue sidewalk vendor permits, establish terms or conditions under which the sidewalk vendor permits shall be issued. Those are the sole responsibility of right-of-way division. Additionally, no employee of the purchasing department has had any conversations or influence over any of these areas, ever. So, and then he points out the part of the code that gives right-of-way the authority to administer this program. So I think the confusion here is that yes, purchasing is involved in the opening of these documents, but they have no discretion with respect to who wins them, who gets them. They have no discretion in terms of the administering of this program. And this is citywide. All our processes go through purchasing as
So who awards
department-wide,
this?
right away.
Right away is really the entity
Well,
that
then
awards.
tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Right away, in this particular instance, is the one that will award the permit.
And that is because after the bids are open, that applicant or whoever must then, it's almost conditional, right? Because then that person has to go through the Health and Human Services and get other things that are approved, which is then reviewed by
By right of way.
right away, who then signs on the dotted line
Correct.
for this vendor to actually be eligible to use this spot.
So
That's
Is that
correct.
right?
In-
Okay.
In this case, what purchasing did was we facilitated the quote process, we collected the quotes, we opened the quotes in public, verified that the vendor met the conditions of the quote, i.e. they brought their check in with them, it was a cashier's check,
Mhm.
they were in fact the high quoter, and at that point, we issued them a letter saying you are now cleared to go to the next process,
Okay.
which could be DHHS, it might not be, because, for instance, there's nothing that says in the vendor.
if you're
program-
selling T-shirts, they don't need to have. yeah.
Exactly.
And is it different for some other applicants? Meaning, does purchasing have a more awarding type of a role under different contracts?
Yes, under different types
Okay.
of normal contracts, in a traditional contract where we had talked about a low bidder, then yes, purchasing would award that contract. We would sign the dotted line
Okay.
for the municipality. because-
So what you're saying then is that this is different?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
And who actually makes up the bid packets?
That is a combination of the department. The department will determine the requirement, will give that to us. We will put what I will refer to as boilerplate terms and conditions that go with the quote or the other documents.
So this would be, and then this could be right away, would do
Yes.
the initial stuff, and then
Correct.
you put it into your boilerplate.
Correct.
Who administers the sidewalk vendor contract?
The right-of-way department.
So they award and administer the
That's
contract.
correct. In this case, that is correct.
So any complaints about a vendor would go to the right-of-way office to mitigate.
And that's
resolve.
straightforward. That's
Yes.
easy, straightforward, the answer is
Well,
yes.
so
Because yours is more confusing.
then I don't think A applies then. 5A
Right.
applies, doesn't apply.
Linda, I'm sorry.
It sounds to me like the only way somebody could complain about how purchasing does these sidewalk vendor things is if someone were to go so far as to allege that the person opening the envelope somehow had up their sleeve like alternate bids and through a sleight of hand produced
The low,
a
the
bid that
highest.
was somehow winning instead of the correct bid.
Correct. And one of the ways we avoid that is we have
Have
a
to wear
clerk
short sleeves.
That's what I'm
accept
trying to
all the
say.
bids, and then when it is time for opening, the clerk physically brings the bids in, hands them in the,
And it's in an open
In an
forum where
open
everybody
area,
can
correct.
see.
So then I don't think 5A applies.
It sounds like we were confused because
Yeah.
it was called an award. When we had the testimony,
And it is.
it was called an award, and so that's how we got hung up on that word, but it sounds like it's not the award.
Okay.
And all these have to apply because
Right.
after each one, there's
That's implicit.
Is this the only situation or bid, or whatever you wanna call it, that you do this way,
We also do the taxi cab permits a very similar way.
similar way?
Yes.
Where you don't award the taxi cab permits?
Correct.
Who awards the taxi cab permits?
Taxi cabs is done by, it's in the, what the heck's the name of the department?
Transportation Commission?
Transportation, not commission.
Yeah.
It's a different department.
Director, yeah, okay. So then it's your interpretation that you are not awarding the bid.
That is correct.
So, of course, everybody sitting around the table at bid opening knows who's gonna be awarded it.
They know who's opening the bids.
Who's eligible to
Quotes,
proceed
and
to the
who's-
next step?
Yeah.
Yes.
To then be awarded
Correct.
the bid from right away. So if somebody were to complain about the process, for example, where would the complaint go? I think, did Linda ask that, or where would the complaint go?
The complaint would start with purchasing since we started the process.
Mhm.
And then we would evaluate what that complaint is and determine, does that go to right away for a decision on the specification? Does it stay in purchasing because there was an error in the process?
I see.
And Mr. Cloninger would he have any role whatsoever in the little bit that purchasing is involved? Would he be in any way involved in the opening up of these bids, or in any way involved with the work that purchasing does for this?
In this particular instance, we tried to put firewalls in place, so Mr. Coninger was not involved. He was not involved in issuing the RFQ. He was not involved in opening the RFQ. Any of the 8 RFQs that were there.
Is the historical information about how much each of the 8 spots goes for available to the public?
Yes, it is.
Okay, is that provided on all bids so that people can?
It's provided if they ask for it,
Okay.
yes.
So, but my point was, Mr. Cloninger does not have because he used to administer this thing, he doesn't have an advantage
That's
by
correct.
knowing what historical that, the spot, is gonna be, over there, wherever the most valuable spot was. We discussed that last time.
So I think the only issue I really have is in 5E, where it says that the employee's administrative supervisor and the designated ethics officer confirm in writing.
That form was filled out.
But it doesn't have the designated
Okay,
ethics
and
officer signature.
that's because purchasing actually goes to me.
Okay,
And I send it to the board.
Okay,
I wanted
gotcha.
the board to look
Okay,
at this
I
issue.
see.
okay.
Now, Ron, Mr. Haddon needs to be able to verify, and I think he
He
has.
signed the form.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that you confirm in writing that the integrity of the public solicitation process is not adversely affected.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and he signed the form.
And none of us in our first discussion, this is a much more involved discussion than we had a month ago, I guess this history does help, at least me.
Yeah.
I can't speak for the other 2
Well,
members that voted.
Go
But
ahead.
I just, I appreciate you coming down and giving us, the benefit of, the.
Well, and in fairness to everybody, when David first said, well, let's go back and look at the code, and I looked at that, I went, wait a minute, doesn't that say purchasing? I mean, I was, as David noticed, is that the end of this? But the more, and then you said, hey, let Dee look at this. The more I thought it just can't mean that, because the consequences is no one who ever is related to purchasing can be involved in any business for the city at any level. And what Julia's example was, she wants to hire a stenographer, and she does that through an informal process, but that eventually will have to go through purchasing. And if that stenographer is a wife of a purchasing person, they can't ever be employed on any level. And I kept thinking, that can't be what this code section meant to be. Now, Julia did tell me what it meant to be, and I'd rather she state that to you, and unfortunately she is gone visiting a parent.
Well, we were informed that when we discussed this, that yes, purchasing did award the bid.
Yes.
That's what
Right.
we were told.
That's what we got hung up on.
Right.
Right.
That they did award. They did not administer it, but they did award it. And so, I mean,
Yes.
that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
If you award it, it says you can.
Right.
But now that you say you don't award the bid. and that's-
Well,
that
in
puts
this
a
particular case,
different
it's a
light.
matter of the definition of award.
Exactly.
because what they've done is they've passed, as I understand it, they've just got one more check on their box. They still have to go to right away, and in a particular case, if it's food, it's DHHS.
That is correct.
So they've just cleared one hurdle, but that's not necessarily awarding the contracts.
Correct.
Well, and the requirements for the award are predetermined. It's high bidder. So it's almost like you could put it on, it could be automatic. I mean, it's just automatic. You open them up,
Yeah.
high bidder gets it.
Even
you
a
know.
lawyer.
So I think what,
Yeah.
all you're really trying to mitigate is, did someone have any information up front to know how high to bid, to get high bid?
Right.
So, and I would say that, from what I've heard, there's no way to, everyone knows what the historical bids are, or they can get that information, so it's readily available. So I recommend you sign it, Dee, if I need to make that a motion or whatever we need to do. So I don't see
Yeah.
an issue with it.
And I think that would be consistent.
Yeah.
This reminds me of the rifle coach
Mhm.
on the service. Remember, we sort of
Yeah.
had that issue. This was like technically he worked for the department. He worked for service athletics, right? Which is the, and we were like, but what does the rifle coach have to do with the creation of the bid process? And he has nothing to do with it. And so it was sort
Right,
of
that's true.
And for me, that it's like what Ted was saying, the facts have changed from our previous analysis because the code hasn't changed. My concern with the memo that you had written is it sounded like we were really trying to fit a square peg in a round hole by logicking ourselves around it, right? But that didn't change the fact that there was still this conflict with the code. That was my concern. That's what Keith mentioned in his email. It sounds to me like what we had is the facts were incorrect. That we misunderstood
The process.
the process.
Mhm.
And so it sounds to me like that because I remember very specifically asking that question. So, purchasing awards this? Yes. I mean, that was the testimony that we had heard at that time. So, but what it sounds like, a deeper analysis of the process, the way it really works, sounds to me like this does not fit the definition of the common sense definition of award, that actually purchasing plays a small role, which we knew, but the award actually isn't done by purchasing, it's done by right of way. And if that's the case, then I have no problem. Because last time, like you mentioned earlier, we had asked Mr. Cloninger and Ron, I'm sorry, your last name, but we talked to you last time too about all of the other issues that would be an obvious conflict or something that would be a debt, because we didn't have any problem. I don't mean to speak for everybody. I had no problem with letting this go forward. It was this code section. But if it does not fit into the code section, I have no problem.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
You made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And are you comfortable, I mean, you're signing this, Dee, and you're confirming these
Yeah.
3 items. Are you comfortable
Yeah.
based on
With
our
the backing
discussion?
from our-
Yeah, given the board's.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion made in the second. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion's carried. So reconsidered and carried.
So there would not be a memo drafted then, right?
No.
It's simply a signature
Yeah.
and it goes on.
Mhm.
Okay.
In his particular case, he missed out on that bid, but there was.
He didn't. He put the bid in and it was held.
Oh, okay.
And I will take, Heath, that was pursuant to my advice. I said, put it in, put your motion for reconsideration in, and sit on it. Do not open it. It has been, I guess it's been open.
Oh, so it's been
There's
held for all
it
of
hasn't
them.
gone
Yeah.
further.
So the rest of the people who were bidding on that spot, nobody knows who got that spot just
Right.
yet.
But they know who, there were 2 bids.
Oh.
And so the other person knows who was the high bidder. But I have not issued the letter to Moncherie
Oh, I see.
where they could go forward.
So it could be withdrawn.
Was he the high bidder? Was his wife the high bidder on that
Yes,
spot?
he was.
Okay.
So we'll have a notice of potential violation.
Yes, we will. Well, that's what we're setting.
Darn.
Yeah.
Yeah, this conversation again.
Well, I remember that was part of your memo too, that he had committed to soliciting one of the
Well, he had
least
already
desirable.
bid in there, yeah.
Yeah, and he was, and that to me was like, wow, that doesn't.
Well,
really
one
solve
of the
problem.
but I did appreciate that as a mitigation, that he was not gonna bid on one of the more contentious spots.
Mhm.
Because that does matter
What-
in subsequent litigation.
Well,
and-
I guess to me it doesn't make either difference.
Not
Yeah,
in
I
terms
know
of
which
this
one he's
closed
going. I know where
section.
if I need to go to visit, it's gonna where it's
What
gonna
was-
be. It's the one in front of the globe, right?
What was
Yeah.
the difference in bids, 1 and 2? It wasn't like $1, was it?
No, it was not. It was a substantial difference.
Okay. Okay.
So they left too much money on the table.
No, that's fine. That's much better.
Yeah.
But I don't. Yeah, never mind. I just. Stop
I'm comfortable
now.
with the decision.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I do
well,
want the board to know, I was trying to just maintain status quo and not have a special meeting for the board. And
Yeah,
Lisa and
no.
I discussed, and I said,
No.
no. Meet at our regular
Yeah,
time,
no,
try to
that's good.
maintain status quo.
Okay, good.
well, the fact that you were able to hold that, it makes me feel better, because I kind of felt, when I first got the reconsideration, I was like, well, geez, my mind hasn't changed. But that's because we didn't understand the whole process.
No.
Okay. Thank you for.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Ron.
thank you for coming down.
You guys really screwed that one.
You had to be here if you had been fooling around.
Terry and I had been here
from the baseball
Yeah.
stadium.
Yeah.
The wheels
Would have been a problem if we had been here.
No, it'd have been a problem.
What are you guys doing?
You had to hear what we heard.
No, had I heard that they administer or award the contract, I would have agreed with you.
And I think we did throw around those words, and
Yeah,
it
we
came
did.
up at the
And
very end.
No, that's what we got hung up on.
Yeah.
We
Because
didn't
they,
come up with the word.
they
Yeah.
don't, so
Yeah.
it says they have to.
Yeah.
So we're moved up to 8A, we finished.
No, there's an 8A2.
8A2. Innes was going to give a report on the P&Z chair, Peter Mulcahy, and staff report.
Oh, I did do that. I talked to actually,
Where are we at here?
it was,
Spring.
which number are you?
It's 8A after the goldenrod.
Oh. Okay.
Oh.
I had volunteered or was asked to get some more information on this one. It's someone on our Planning and Zoning Commission who does business with the city, a consulting business on transportation model updates. He used to do that for us. He retired. He still does it on a consulting business. He's now on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so I did call, and the person I talked to was Craig Lyon.
I know Craig, I've known him
Yeah,
30 years.
And basically he said that John has been on the Planning and Zoning Commission for a while. He recuses himself really anytime an AMATS issue comes up, which comes, AMATS, the bridge.
The transportation thing.
And he does recuse himself. He's very good about disclosure. Doesn't see a conflict except in obvious cases like that. And then he not only he recuses himself, so he had no problem. I read to him the different, on the back, to the best of my knowledge, not in fact attempted to improperly influence. The 3 or 4 things that an ethics officer would sign for that department. And by the way, their area-wide person would not have known about this, although we're changing that form. So I would recommend that I go ahead and sign off on that.
Are there certain requirements to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission?
It depends on what seat he's in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because in some of the boards, and I can't speak for planning and zoning, but I'm sure it's similar, is that they require, like
Knowledge.
David couldn't be in this, he could be a member of this board, but he's a member, one of the reasons, because he's a lawyer.
Right.
Because it's a requirement, at least one of us is a lawyer.
Right.
And apparently another one is you have to work for the university.
Yeah. That's unwritten.
So do we have a motion to accept this for Mr. Spring?
So moved. Second.
And
So do you
can sign it?
I'll sign off.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any opposed? None, hearing none, that one carries.
Wow, look at
And-
this. We're actually close to on schedule.
And we have a guest.
How you guys doing?
So did you have a good time last night?
Had a great time last night. We got there by 7:30. Did not know what to do with myself. My wife's in Juneau doing something for the unions with the legislature and the teachers. So I went home to an empty house. It was nice. I mean, we raised
Careful, you
kids.
don't get out, because you may be going home to an empty house a lot more. Been there,
She
done
knows.
that.
This is being recorded.
We raised 8 kids, and so the house is always somebody was there, you know.
Yeah.
But now we're at that stage in our life where empty nest syndrome, and it's great coming home and seeing an empty house. I like it.
So
Because we now have 16 grandchildren.
someone in training is here to speak to his.
Model ordinance.
Go ahead.
And Keith, or for the board, what I did is I asked Lisa to arrange for, can we call you Dick for the?
Would you
okay,
please?
okay. We arranged for Dick to come here to explain a little bit about his ordinance. I read through it, I had certain questions, and I guess my overall question is maybe to explain what you're attempting to do and what you look at what role
Where
we're
is
playing
that?
and what you're trying to accomplish.
What I like is your opinion on it, whether you think it makes sense or not.
Okay.
It is designed to stop the people that we hire as our lobbyists in
confidential. Do you wanna-
DC from raising money for an incumbent elected official. Because I want, when we hire a lobbyist, I want them to work full-time on lobbying city of Anchorage issues in front of the Congress, not trying to raise money for an elected official. That's not the purpose we hire them for. And that doesn't take away their First Amendment rights. They can still donate their private money to whoever they want. But what this does, it stops them from holding fundraisers for elected official. That's
Which
not the
is
reason we
which
should
is
hire
similar
them.
to APOC rules.
No.
No, I know people who lobbyists, they're not allowed to contribute or hold
Exactly.
parties for.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was an APOC rule,
There is an APOC rule that deals with state
Yeah.
state officials,
okay.
not city. This deals with our city elected officials. For example, if I'm running for mayor, which I'm not, by the way,
Yeah.
to get clear, I cannot go back to DC and get a lobbyist and say, "Hey, could you hold a fundraiser for me?" Because I want them to work full time on the city of Anchorage issues, not trying to raise money, hoping, well, if they become mayor, maybe next year I'll be able to get a better contract, a higher contract with the lobbyist. That
Okay. And-
it's putting their interest in front of the city of Anchorage issues. I want them to just work on Anchorage issues in front of Congress.
And Dick, if I could ask you some questions, I'm truly trying to understand this. So, you say you want them to lobby in full time, but most of our lobbyists are on a contract basis, so they're not working for us full time, right? They're working for us for 50,000, 200,000.
But the issues they're working on, they're taking our issues back to Congress.
Right.
We're not hiring them to run fundraiser activities for elected official. And right now that's happening. We have mayors go back there. And when they're back there, conveniently they decide to hold a fundraiser for that individual. And so they call all their friends that they've lobbied for on us and say, hey, come on and donate money. I'm just trying to close that little loophole down.
So if a lobbyist were working on a part-time basis or on a contract basis, like you were saying, it would prevent them, whether they work 20 hours a week, or I'm not sure how the process works, but say they work 20 hours a week, they would not, under any circumstances, be able to also hold a fundraiser for.
Well, they could donate their private funds.
Okay.
We're not taking away the First Amendment rights to donate their money wherever they want to donate it to.
So
But I
when
don't
you're
want them
saying
to hold a fundraiser.
So when you're saying that they should be spending their time on municipal business, even if that's not their full-time job, if they are spending time working on municipal business, then that's what they should be doing. They should not be holding fundraisers, no
From
matter.
my perspective, yes.
Okay.
And so
Yes,
under
ma'am.
this plan, would that mean that an incumbent who wanted to do a fundraiser through a lobbyist would have to hire a separate lobbyist than the one already hired by the city?
It means a lobbyist cannot hold a fundraiser for them.
Any lobbyist at all?
Any lobbyist that we have working for the city,
But they
Let's
could
say you're a
theoretically
lawyer
hire,
and
if
you're-
they were independently wealthy, they could hire a different lobbyist to do a fundraiser?
Well, you don't need to be a lobbyist to do a fundraiser.
Okay.
So while working for the city, they're not also fundraising.
so to me it makes sense. To somebody else it may not, but I want your opinion on it.
Do we have a copy of the contract,
Of
of a lobbyist contract with the municipality?
we don't in front of us, but it's a typical sort of professional services contract. It doesn't, I'm sure it doesn't even address this issue now if this were to come to pass, whether we would, some of our contracts mention nepotism or conflict of interest, but it would be a milquetoast type of contract. It wouldn't probably address this one way or the other.
So,
Mr.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
yeah, Ted.
Who does this pertain to?
Elected officials.
Elected officials?
Yeah.
Any municipal, state?
No state people. This would be just, for
Municipal.
example, mayor and assembly members.
Okay.
Okay, now this does say employees too, Dick.
Okay.
It does say, well, it's just
Then-
that branches it out a lot is
Yeah.
my concern.
But employees too. I can prune it down if we want to.
Okay. If I decided to run, okay, you're already there where you can't do it, but I can do it. Running for the same seat. I mean, they don't say, it
The
seems
difference
to be
is-
taking some rights away from you.
No, the difference is you would not be approving their contract. I, on the other hand, on the assembly, would approve their contract before,
But I may be,
Give it to
if
them.
I'm elected, I may be.
maybe so, but I can't plan for a contingency. I'm just telling you from my perspective, they should not be able to raise money for incumbents.
For incumbents, so
Incumbents.
it basically pertains to incumbents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about, and maybe this is why you have other municipal employees here, what if there's a municipal employee that is running, wants to run for something? Could they use the lobbies to do fundraisers?
No.
Okay. So was that the
Yeah.
intent of the or municipal employees?
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could tell me what's the concern then about like sort of like the possible conflict of interest or corruption? So you pointed out one that I get right away. So like, I think if the assembly approves of the contracts ultimately,
And the
for
administration submits it to the assembly.
Okay, and so the concern, so is at least for the assembly and the mayor, I can see a potential sort of quid pro quo or something, some sort of either corruption or appearance of corruption.
And how about from the lobbyist mind, if they think if I get more money raised for this individual and they get elected, my contract next year might be better.
Yeah, right. So how about, so I guess, how about, or Steve's point, what about the rest of employees in the city? So it seems like the connection might be a little bit more indirect.
We can prune this legislation down. That's the reason I sent it to you guys. Tell us what on this works for you, what doesn't work for you. If you think I should drop other employees out, I can drop it out. When we read legislation, we read it broad, and then you start to prune it down.
But if you
Because
prune
nothing's
it down
perfect.
too much, then you might miss people who are employees but working under the direct supervision of the elected officials. So you probably need to get their
I would be
sphere of
comfortable
control.
with executive appointees, because beyond that, you're not gonna have anybody. What happens if you have, for example, a chief of staff for the mayor that decides to run, goes back there to DC and has a fundraiser held by the lobbyist? It's just when we spend this amount of money on lobbyists, I do not want them to harvest their contacts for any elected official. I want them to work on behalf of the city on legislation in front of Congress.
But, okay, then this only pertains to running for a municipal office.
Yeah.
So,
No, it would be municipal,
No.
state, or federal office, right?
Take a look at it. I don't remember last time.
Yeah, right now, this one, the copy we have says municipal, state,
I've done
or
so much
federal
legislation
office.
since we
All right,
drafted
so
it.
I
yeah,
see. Which I think sort of makes sense. Like if the concern that you're worried about is this sort of like, potential conflict of interest or kind of quid pro quo, then it doesn't matter what office the elected official might be
Can I,
running for.
and
Yeah.
Ted, I
Go
know you
ahead.
want to speak, but to me it doesn't. If you're concerned about that the lobbyists
Yeah,
may,
it would be anything.
that the lobbyists may
I just
favor,
don't want to prune. I just don't want
get a favor, it wouldn't have to be a
contacts of
municipal
lobbyists to raise funds.
elected official that can influence that. So what I'm talking about, go ahead. Why don't I let you two go ahead and then I'll ask.
Because when I think of what happens is, let's say you're mayor and you're running for office, and you made all these contacts on behalf of the assembly, on behalf of the city. You're now pruning all those contacts to raise money for that elected official. And that's not what I want them doing back there as a lobbyist. I want them working for the city.
but this
Not working
pertains
for
to
anybody.
local ones too,
Yeah.
right? So it's not only ones in DC, it's state.
I'm
and
primarily doing the DC one because I saw an instance in which an individual went back there and held a fundraiser by a lobbyist. I don't want that being done. I asked other mayors that have done the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't want us paying their way back there. I think you guys took care of that with Amy's, which we passed last night, which is good. This one deals with the other part, and that's the lobbies.
Yeah.
So they can still donate their private money to anybody they want. This doesn't go into where they send their money. This just deals with holding fundraisers.
So,
BCO,
Prohibits
APSC
those general
rules,
do the same
viol-
thing.
Yeah.
prohibits
Yeah.
lobbyists from raising funds.
I guess I was confused as to the level because it seems to me, Dick, that inherent in your concern is that the incumbent may have control or influence over the lobbyist's contract for the following year, that there's a symbiotic relationship there.
Quid pro quo.
Quid pro,
Yeah.
okay.
You know?
But if it's a state official, that wouldn't be true
but if it were
necessarily.
a municipal official running for state office,
State office.
then
Oh, I see
my
what you're
concern
saying.
would be that the lobbyist might feel under pressure and might be influenced. Oh, I better hold this fundraiser. Amongst other things, this person might lose, And if they remain the incumbent in that situation, then they will continue to have say over my contract.
And this is why we bring it to you people, because you look
Well,
at it.
in this particular instance, that
We're
would.
politicians, we look at it differently.
Or we maybe
And,
do.
and if the person would happen to win, then it's an investment in future potentially
Right.
bigger contracts.
Well, that's right. And then in some cases, the fundraiser would probably be held before, if it's an annual contract, the fundraiser might well be held
Before we vote on the
a renewal
contract.
period. That's right. So there might be, at least one more renewal period. And then I can certainly see the potential conflict of interest where you have perhaps a elected official who has a direct say on a lobbyist contract, perhaps suggesting to the lobbyist, perhaps you should hold a fundraiser for me. Oh, and by the way, your contract's up for renewal in 6, 7, 8 months, and I'll be one of the people who
You
has a
wouldn't say
in
that to them, they'd know.
Oh, that's right.
That's the understood.
That's understood,
Yeah.
they would know.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking, because that's, this is more your business
Well, I wish
than
you
mine,
know
but
what you
this,
think about it, what needs changed on it. I mean, nothing is holy writ. If you think something needs changed, let us know. We'll bring it to the assembly. That's why we have you guys here.
Oh, so what other employees then? So I can see it for the assembly event. What other employees would you say, in terms of
Executive
logic,
appointees.
that would have an influence on the contract process for a lobbyist?
I would cut it down to executive appointees. Because both the administration and the assembly has executive appointees.
Okay.
So this prohibits the employee, but it also prohibits the lobbyist from doing it. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Which I agree with.
Anyway, any other thing else?
Well, it doesn't prohibit the lobbyists, I don't think. The code only
Prohibits
speaks.
the lobbyists from conducting a fundraiser.
Under two, and two.
The second part, under in.
Prohibits
Yeah. Under
Okay.
in.
Lobbyists shall decline
And
to
then
host
35,
fundraising
yeah.
activities.
the lobbyist
Is
shall
there any-
decline.
I'm just not that familiar with the politics of how it works back in DC, but
And you-
is
that's
there
what you
any
meant,
way?
right? You want to stop the lobbyists too.
Yeah,
What,
lobbyists too.
what comes to mind is there any way of manipulating the definition of the word host? Or is that I can't,
That's a pretty well understood political
Is it?
phrase, yeah.
okay,
It's where you're going to send an invitation to attend a fundraiser.
with your name on.
With your name on it?
As a
Yeah.
host.
That's
Like, for
right.
example, around town, someone will have a fundraiser at someone's house.
Yeah.
On there will be
The
hosted
list.
by blah, blah, blah,
All
blah,
these
blah,
people,
blah.
yeah.
Right, so that, any of those,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
So-
Yeah, I might want to expand on that.
Yeah,
Right, like
Host,
for example, if-
organize,
yeah, what if the person organized it but didn't put his name on the invitation?
because that's what will happen.
I'll leave it up to you guys.
Yeah, while you're exempting, can you, we're already exempt from municipal elections, can we get exemption from state and federal too? Good Lord, the amount of fundraising opportunities we could do.
And we're all satisfied that this is needed because accepting a fundraising from a lobbyist already contracted to the city is not under the ethics code accepting a gift from an individual or an entity with interests that may be substantially affected by the performance of the person's official municipal duties under circumstances where the timing and nature of the gift would cause a reasonable person to question the person's judgment in exercising official municipal duties on a matter affecting the donor. So that's not broad enough to cover the
Now that's,
circumstance.
where are you reading there, subsection?
And then after they're done,
It's page 5 of 34 in this, and
What's the-
it's 1.15.025A8.
Okay.
And arguments
We'll take a look at that.
argument potentially could be made that the
024,
person versus the
024?
campaign could be two different
Yes.
entities.
020, I'm sorry.
And I think this is trying to wrap that up.
020.
It's the attempt to do it.
This is much more specifically pointed, is,
Mhm.
Trying to.
yeah.
It's the difference of a
Yes.
Good.
rifle versus shotgun. I want to get one specific thing changed. Yes,
Right.
Dee?
Linda, partly in response to yours, is generally the ethics code has not been held to apply to independent contractors
Mm.
like a lobbyist. So your section did, I would just suggest, a friendly suggestion is that the N2, that when a lobbyist is registered to become before the municipality, the lobbyist shall decline to host fundraising, that's really a AMC 2.35
That's for,
issue.
I think that's for our lobbyists that register with the
Yeah.
clerk's office. We only have two right now.
Uh-huh.
One is, he's working for APDA, and the other one is Paul Fuse. who's working on that deteriorated properties.
Delbert
Yeah.
Smith. Delbert
There's
Smith.
two of them now.
But aren't they still
I
independent
know
contractors?
Delbert Smith.
What?
Aren't they still independent, they're
He's
still
still alive?
contractors, they're not employees? Or,
They're lobbyists on behalf of these two different groups. We just
Okay.
had that come through us recently. We saw who they are.
Mhm.
So it always we tend to look at their opinions a little differently because they're registered lobbyists. We only have two now. We used to have just one, Bill Bobber,
Uh-huh.
and then he had his little incident and left the state. He's now down in Seattle.
So he is on contract, they're not full-time employees.
I think they're on
With benefits.
They're on
contract.
contract, I
So
think. with the-
technically, the code doesn't apply to them. I don't know if 2.35 changes that relationship. But that's what I'm saying, Linda, when you say, isn't this
Mhm.
broad enough to cover? Well,
Right.
probably not, because they're independent contractors. This, to me, would speak to, or the intent of it, Dick, would speak to the elected official or executive employee. That's what the municipal code is aimed at.
That's,
The lobbyist is going to be in the
That would
lobbyist
be
section,
6, right?
2.35, yeah.
So let me know what you guys think.
Okay.
And it's completely up to you guys to chop it up, slice it up, tell me what needs changed from your perspective. I really want to know.
Okay.
And I'll take that forward to the assembly.
okay.
When is your projected hearing date?
Maybe you guys have time to get your work done. I'm not in any push on this thing. If I do it this month, fine. If I do it next month,
Okay.
fine.
Right
I'm
now,
not
it's
pushing.
postponed till April 22nd, but we can get an extension on that if
Oh, you can get
necessary.
anything you want.
Yeah, okay, that was,
I mean, the bad thing is when you've got a deadline that you've got to meet, and sometimes we cut things to get them done. Just take your time. I'm not in any hurry to get it done right now.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
No.
Thank you for your
Okay.
time.
oh, I
Thank
appreciate
Thank you
it.
for all you guys do working with us, okay? And I know we don't pay you guys anymore. I know you guys have to pick up your own lunch. I've heard that before. I'm sorry.
Oh, actually, we're buying them lunch.
Yeah.
So.
Good.
We gotta-
That's great. So you do get it, Betty.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Dick.
Yeah, when you read our report, you'll see our Benny. So, independent of our witness, do we have any discussion? Or anybody have issues? I appreciate him being willing to edit the, just employees down to executive appointees.
I found the conflict very difficult to grasp, other than if they have control over the contract. I mean, if the municipal, the official or elected official or, mayor has control over the contract. But I found the other sort of conflict of interest implications difficult to understand. In fact, when I first read this, I called Lisa and said, was there an AM that went with this, which is the explanatory document? So tell me why you're doing this, other than the mayor's trip back to Washington, D.C., which you don't like. And I was glad, Ted, when you started jumping in, because you're someone who's been in these types of positions.
Didn't we address the mayor's trip back?
Yes.
That was
We
on a
did with
different thing where
Amy
they had to pay a
DeBosco.
percentage. And
But
that
also address it with somebody.
No,
submitted
somebody made a
complaint.
complaint, and yes, and we.
And that's
we-
confidential, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
It was not accepted by the.
No,
Yeah.
no names.
Yeah, no, names we did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We did, and so this is apart from that issue. I think that's where it arises from, however, and
Now, and one of the reasons I wanted to see the contract is actually also to understand how the lobbying contract is awarded, or is it even a contract?
well, I can tell you it is a contract.
Okay.
My question is whether this 2.35, the registration process, is somehow changes that relationship from an independent contractor to something more. I mean, to my understanding, it's a registration, couple pages registration form. I'm not sure it fundamentally changes the nature of that person, or
But I mean, is it
somehow
is
now
it
they're more than a contractor.
Is it a
or-
closed bid process and low bidder gets the lobbying contract? or-
Very rarely, because it's going to be what's called sole source,
Okay.
because you want that particular person because of
Right.
their expertise and context. So no,
Or
it's
because the
almost
money
never
raised for you
competitive.
off the election
Right.
cycle.
It would be what's called a sole source contract. This person is the best. I
And
think.
who normally drives that decision?
Whoever's hiring the lobbyist. So if it's a port, they'll know who they want to be the port lobbyist.
Okay.
If it's I guess there's a labor lobbyist, it sounds like,
Okay.
or Mr. Pruse, he's trying to do deteriorated property stuff. So he's down there, like the McKay building, getting tax exemption, so he apparently is down in Juneau trying to get the
Dana?
state to, excuse me?
Dana Bruce?
No, well, I'm not even sure what his first name, I thought it was Paul.
So-
I'm not sure.
Oh, Fuse.
So they're
Oh,
probably
okay.
Paul Fuse, because there's also a
they're
lobbyist,
probably
Dana
not
Bruce.
contracted on a time basis. They're probably contracted on some sort of a delivery or outcome basis.
And that I'm not sure of.
Yeah.
You know, the assembly objected strenuously to the port one being on you get $50,000 to lobby for us. And they
Right.
objected to that. They had to have more definition.
Can, either you or you, on N1, explain N1 to me.
It's already in here, in the code. In one, November
N1,
one?
yeah.
N1 or N2?
What is written.
Well, in
Well,
one.
N1 is
N2?
part of the code.
N1's
N2
already part of the code. He just creates a one
Yeah,
because
but
he adds.
explain it. I mean,
They don't, can I explain it to you?
Yeah.
What this is saying is that, that an elected body, so for instance, the assembly can engage a lobbyist for money to try to influence another body of the municipality. So,
So assembly couldn't hire a lobbyist to influence purchasing.
right, or to influence the mayor,
Or
and I would
something.
assume
I'm
that
trying
this
to-
involves the school board,
So-
is that we can't, the school board can't spend money to on a lobbyist to lobby the assembly with respect to their budget. So
Oh,
you don't
I
want to
see.
waste
I
money
see.
intergovernmental.
Yeah.
You can't
Inside.
hire
So
other
strictly-
people. Yeah,
okay.
this is just
But that
inside.
only pertains to another, like the school board. They're
Exactly.
basically for the school board and the assembly.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And I suppose if you follow the contract logic of it, like the concern is the conflict of interest or the quid pro quo that comes, then that wouldn't pertain only to lobbyists, right? I mean, that would pertain to anyone who has a contract with the city who would be in a position where the member of the municipality encouraging them to host fundraising activities for them also has a say in the renewal of the contract or the terms of their next contract or something like that.
So if CH2 and Hill had a fundraiser because they wanted to make sure they continued to get port contracts.
Can we individually host?
Not for
political
assembly,
fundraisers?
not for local stuff.
Not for municipal stuff.
Why not?
Because it's against our code.
That's why we gave that up when we signed on the board.
I mean, there's something about the ethics code. Ethics
Yeah.
board has specific.
Well, so I guess, to me, are there any other people connected with the municipality that can't host political fundraisers?
I mean, we can't even endorse.
No, but are there any other?
Or give money, they
Are there
can.
any other people or entities associated with the municipality that also have that restriction?
Not that I know of. but
So
I
in the
don't know.
code, only
Yeah.
the five of
Well,
us.
I don't know whether in the ethics code, yes. I don't know if there's some other section where, I can't think of who it would
Okay.
be, that could be restricted as well for
So right now,
similar
only 5
reasons.
people are restricted.
I guess
Perhaps,
unless,
yeah.
you're probably also restricted from fundraising for groups that would be for or against ballot propositions and things like that, right?
Just the
Because-
5 of us.
No, I think all municipal employees, right, would be.
Oh, I don't think so. Privately on your own hours. You can fundraise for, is that you can't do it as part of your official
Oh, okay.
duties.
Okay.
Like the police were not lobbying, what's the wrong word, but the police were advocating for voting for more community service funding for community service policing program.
Well, and then we get into that one whole section, so it gets more confusing, but the mayor can designate the police chief to take a position for the city.
So I thought when we can't talk about that one because we didn't. Can we talk about the trip back to we can't?
No,
right?
not really.
Okay. Can I give an example?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a hypothetical.
Okay. Yeah.
So say, for example, if
For example, if you're, it goes back to your question about, are they contracted for 20 hours a week
Right.
or whatever, and it almost, a couple of comments he made kind of left me thinking, why can't somebody use their contacts to fundraise on behalf of somebody? And that's the, to me,
On their own
it's-
personal time.
On their own personal time. I mean, that happens all the time. And,
Well-
and most politicians actually campaign on their elected time. I mean, look at especially our federal officials. That's all they ever do is campaign. I'm not sure when they ever get their work done, but that's my own personal opinion.
They
But,
don't get their work done.
Yeah, so, but that's why, if we understanding the contract better would help me. Because, I mean, we're paying them to do something, so what are we paying? If they're accomplishing the work under the contract, I don't think the code should prohibit them from doing something else, unrelated to the work that they're contracted to do.
Except I do understand the concern about the quid pro quo. I see your point, but I understand the point about the quid pro quo. Well, we'll do like it's an automatic thing. We'll do the fundraiser for this individual because this individual has influence over the renewal of my contract. I mean, I understand that. I'm not sure exactly how I would want to come.
Well, how does the contract read? I mean, it
Yeah.
reads that, it's kind of, I'll go to something I know contractually, which is our adjunct faculty contracts at the university. Current employment does not guarantee future employment, period. You're hired to teach one semester, and it doesn't matter. We might or might not rehire you the next semester or ever again. And you have no standing on that decision as an adjunct faculty member.
But that's probably why, at least ethically,
So-
it'd be really inappropriate then for, say, a chairperson or a dean to ask an adjunct faculty member, say, to host a fundraising
Yeah.
event for them because they decided to
Yeah.
run for municipal office, right?
Right.
I mean, whether it's legal or not, it
Yeah.
would be completely unethical
Yeah.
to do it
Yeah.
for that reason.
Yeah.
The concern about possible quid pro quo
Yeah.
and exploiting people's positions. I mean, that part I can see, but you're right. I mean, it'd be worth taking a look at the contract and start thinking through, how do these contracts get renewed? How do they get
Right.
awarded? What is the potential quid pro quo? And then I'm genuinely interested then in the idea of like,
Mhm.
yeah, but it's not necessarily the lobbyist
Right.
that's the bother. It's the fact that you have people who have contracts with the city, may perhaps dependent on key elected and appointed officials for the renewal of their contract, also engaging in fundraiser events for those officials.
And this doesn't eliminate the loophole, because I think we all know that even if this was put into place, that those people would still be doing the fundraising and supporting the activity anyway. You
just don't put your name on
You
it.
just don't put your name on it. You get 3 of your friends to put their names on it, and you still do all the work. You still use your contacts to get the people to come to the event.
Well, it's
So
interesting.
we really haven't solved anything.
Although if you're
Well-
if you're running for office, though, you may be a little shyer about that, right? Because you may say to that lobbyist, don't be too involved in the preparations of this, right? Because if it does come out, like if we were to expand and say host or organize or another way facilitate a
Yeah.
fundraising event, if it were to come out like the DC thing, like a lot of details about the DC event, about as a hypothetical event in a nation's capital, that those details come out, right? That could be damaging. It could be a
Yeah.
violation of the ethics code. I mean, I think you would see a bit of a chilling effect.
Yes.
Well,
No, go ahead.
Oh, just quickly, it looks as though that one of the issues that I see with this is that between the 025 subsection 6 and 2, a municipal employee running for municipal state elected office shall not accept in any form fundraising from a lobbyist. That's pretty broad to try to capture any, that would include, say, organization, or even if the lobbyist's name is not on something, that's pretty broad. Whereas this one down here says, lobbyists shall decline to host. That to me seems much easier to get around to,
Yeah.
like you say, it doesn't really close the loophole.
No.
The definitions seem different,
Mhm.
and that's
Mhm.
something that needs to be addressed. Meaning, for the municipal employee or executive, whatever. But I mean, for the municipal employee, I want to make sure that if we're going to apply this to a municipal employee and a municipal contractor, that we have the same type of prohibition or restriction in some way. Otherwise, we're opening that door to, okay, are they treated differently or not? Or if we are going to treat them differently, why? Because it looks to me like each one of these subdivisions, one applies to this municipal employee, one applies to the lobbyist. I would think they'd want to be more parallel.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, David, I agree. I think what is the difference between a lobbyist and another contractor for the city? Because a lobbyist really is a contractor for the city. And just sort of a reminder, it's a small world. I mean, many of the heads of business in our community, Dow Engineering and CH2M Hill, they all went to high school with everybody on the assembly and the mayor. And who's going to be at their fundraising event? But all the business leaders in our community. So if you start down this path,
They'd have to
that
scatter.
other contractors can't hold fundraising. Contractors in danger of benefiting from a quid pro quo. I mean, that's who your base is when you're running for office. Is other, and of course they have conduct because they're 80% of the business world up here. So I guess the thing is, so if we don't go as far as contractor, and that's a policy decision, how is a lobbyist different in a quid pro quo setting than any other city contractor? Why are we singly? Because we can't do all contractors. That doesn't make sense, really. So why is a lobbyist different?
Because of the connections.
Because the lobbyist provides intangibles rather
More
than
effective.
tangible goods.
Well, I think part of from Dick's comments, it sounds like part of the idea is that that lobbyists wind up using these contacts which they've developed on city time. So in some sense, it's like those contacts are kind of, if you will, a kind of intellectual, it's an intellectual resource that's been paid for by the
Intellectual
city,
property.
and then it's an intellectual resource that's been
It's an
intellectual resource that's been funded by
Yeah.
the city that's then being turned around and used to benefit only one particular member of the
Right.
city, perhaps over and against other members of
Right.
the municipality in an election. I suppose that's what it sounded like Dick was,
So
chafing at a little bit.
So in an academic setting, how do you get around the intellectual property issue so you can retain the rights to that intellectual property? Because it doesn't necessarily automatically become property of the university, right? There's ways that you can get around having your intellectual property become the property of the university, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But part of it depends on funding, right? I mean, like if you're university funded.
And I think it also depends on when you do the work.
And was the lobbyist hired because they already had those personal
Right.
contacts?
Yeah.
Right. That's the
Yeah.
flip side there, right?
Yeah.
And so the city said, Joe Blow knows 26 people pertinent to this issue. And so we're going to hire Joe Blow. And then the incumbent says, hey, Joe Blow, I need you and your 26 people to be invited to a fundraiser I want to have because they know all about this issue. Chicken and egg.
That's true.
So who's the supposedly we had lobbyists in D.C. Who would have hired those lobbyists in D.C.?
Would have been the executive branch?
Generally,
Okay.
the executive branch.
Approved by the assembly.
Yes.
Right, the assembly has to have the approval, and they're paid on an hourly basis. In other words,
They bill their hours just like the lawyers do.
Right.
Yeah. So they would never overbill.
Yeah, and when you negotiate to hire a lobbyist, you look at the other clientele. One lobbyist has a lot of clientele.
Yeah.
And so, if you want to do something on the slope, you're going to look for a lobbyist that lobbies for the oil companies, and so, and hire that lobbyist.
And here, by the way, that lobbyist calls 5 of his other clientele and says, "Go to this fundraising." Is this part of that? I mean, again, it's a small world. Everybody knows everybody.
I'm not sure how to approach this, but
I mean, if you expanded it to everyone who has a contract, I mean, it would be for fundraising, right? I mean, and so your business leaders of the world, I mean, they would still be contributing, and they could probably still, I think they would still be able to come to these fundraisers, right? But they wouldn't be able to organize them. So it
What's
could be
the-
workable.
But you see these fundraisers, it's typically hosted, especially with somebody's house, it's typically hosted by about 8 to 10 other people who contribute funds towards the fundraiser and contribute funds towards that candidate.
I've hosted.
Yes, you know, and I'm,
leader
you know.
industry, but yeah, but.
Well, neither am I, and I
it's
haven't
like those people-
participated
those people
because
wouldn't
I've
be
been on
able
the
to-
board.
I mean, like, I don't want to get too idealistic, but I mean, like, look, this is one of the major problems we have with our democracy right now, is that the predominant amount of funding comes from a very, very select source. And yeah, I mean, we obviously wouldn't recommend this, but what would it mean to say that, you know, people who have contracts pending with the city or renewal couldn't all the leaders of business wouldn't be able to dominate the fundraising scene, and elected officials would be forced to rely on small donations from the general public to run their
Okay,
campaigns.
so you're going to change
Boo-hoo,
the nature of,
right?
you're going to change the nature of all politics.
I thought
Well,
the Supreme
you know.
Court already ruled on this, though, didn't they? Recently?
Yeah, Citizens
Yeah.
United cannot be overruled by our, no.
No, neither Citizens United
Yes,
nor
you're
the
right.
Collection
Supreme Court
case
did say that.
address this. They have to do, and Dick's did this, and this was Dick's point, part of his point, right?
Mhm.
In no way would this, are we offering, because we cannot, that would go against the Supreme Court.
Mhm.
People can give that $5,000 limit to an individual, for
First
federal
Amendment.
offices, right?
First
And they have
Amendment.
now an unlimited aggregate amount that they can
Yes.
give. This would be a slightly different question of like, what fundraising activities can you hold? Now, it may also be unconstitutional to say people can't do it, but it may be unconstitutional.
we
Well, as I
can't
say,
do
and
it.
that may be
Yeah.
unconstitutional. If
Maybe
one of
we
us were
oughta-
to challenge that in
yeah,
federal
maybe.
or in state court,
Get a
I'm not
lawyer to help us
entirely
challenge
sure
it.
it would hold up. But, you know, the idea is like, look, you know,
If you sign on as a lobbyist for the municipality, this is one of the things that the concept is one thing you sign on for, that you cannot have fundraising events.
Well, you know what's interesting about this is sort of special legislation. If you're one of those 2 people who
Yeah.
do this,
Yeah.
you cannot.
Right, I know, yeah.
I mean, now that I
right.
think about it.
Well,
Well, how often does the
but
city
it's written in
employ
here
more
for
than
5,
2?
It's written here for 5 people. Can't do it, right?
What is that?
The 5 of us can't do it.
Oh.
Well, is it common to have more than 2, or is it
I
typically?
don't know very much about it.
I kinda wish I
this
knew
year
a
we
little bit
had
more about
have
this.
2. Last year we had 5. I think years in the past we've had 15 to 20.
Hmm.
This
So
is a
the
low
Mine
year.
is tight this year.
Well,
I don't know why
As far as
the
number of
trend has
lobbyists.
been. Yeah.
So has this been an issue when there's been a mayor that maybe has a different political viewpoint than the current mayor?
Apparently, not that I'm aware of.
So like the previous mayor, were there issues with the previous mayor using lobbyists to also fundraise for his federal campaign?
I don't know.
Do we know that at all?
I don't remember any.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
I was
I mean-
appointed by this mayor, so I don't know what happened previous.
Previous,
You were there.
I was there.
Well, Ted.
No, there was.
That's our historian.
I mean, it's been going on for.
Yeah. So in all likelihood, the previous mayor
Oh, yeah,
did the same
they
thing.
all did.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And the greatest one was Senator Stevens.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But looking at just
Well-
at the municipality, so it's not a political party issue. Both parties do. If there were a party system
Oh, I think that's
in
right.
our
No, I think it's probably
municipal
widely.
elected officials.
We also, too, we have to keep in mind, too, we're looking for the ethical conflict. We're not
Yeah.
really debating the merits of it.
Yeah.
The assembly can say, this is ridiculous for 2 people or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, if you think about like the spirit of, you know, well, not even
Yeah.
the spirit, the purpose of the code, one of its explicit purposes laid out in the preface, the introduction, is to address conflicts of interest and where possible prevent them from happening and manage them when they do occur. And so, you know, I kind of like this idea. I have to admit, you know, I think it's I guess it's why it's always the danger of having an ethicist on the end. Right? It's like, this sounds great. This sounds great to me.
Here's an idea to float out. If there is a conflict of interest, sometimes that conflict of interest can be managed without necessarily having to be abolished. So is this the best way to handle that potential conflict? Could there be some other method of handling the conflict of interest, such as, and I'm not saying this is a good or bad idea, just throwing it out there because it's the first one that comes to my head, a lobbyist who then holds a fundraiser for an incumbent is barred the following year from having a continuing contract.
Yeah, or if possible, the elected official has to recuse themselves from consideration.
Yeah,
An
so
assembly person.
so
would
is
give
there a
it-
scalpel that's more precise?
Or kind of like Dick said, a rifle approach versus a shotgun approach.
Well, I love my shotgun.
Well, see, part of, we don't want to, we're not legislators.
You're speaking.
Yeah,
Right,
we're not.
and we kind of have to say, does this work or not, with maybe some minor suggestions.
That's
But
true,
the concept is,
yeah.
I don't want to be doing Dick's job,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this is what they spend hours doing, get paid to do, and I don't want to become a legislator.
I think
Liaison.
I think another approach
Yeah.
is to try to handle it contractually, and so is there anything in here that deals with procurement of services that we could point to that would allow maybe a modification, whatever document they use to employ the lobbyists to maybe help, mitigate this?
I'm not sure in the ethics
Yeah.
code, I mean, again,
Or anywhere else?
well, I've wondered, I mean, we have our municipal lobbyist section,
Yeah.
2.35, which I've copied, but I haven't read it through it. Why, maybe that, something like this would be more appropriate if you're a lobbyist for the city, then you can't
Right.
do certain things, or
Yeah.
then because you sign on for that.
Yeah, I don't think we need to create, and you're right, these don't match up.
Mhm.
But why do we have to have one in each area? I mean, it might be prevented just in the lobbyist part.
Or just in
I mean, but and like you said, in 2.35,
right.
maybe it's already there. And maybe it's a simple entry on the,
Right.
on whatever contracting document you use to add that in.
Okay, so
They acknowledge that. It doesn't matter. I mean, eventually, if an elected official tried to use them in that capacity, then there would be an issue that we would have to address.
Right, which is why you would want it somewhere in the ethics code. You've got to apply, because we don't
Yeah.
have jurisdiction over
The rest
all
of
city
it.
code. We've got jurisdiction over the ethics code.
Or-
So there would have to be some part added.
Well,
But we could say, go back.
Yeah,
And put it in somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting we do, I'm just simply saying that we could kick it
I
back.
just think for the amount of times this might occur,
Right.
which is probably typically in an election year or a year before an election year, and the frequency of a current elected official running for another office, well, I guess it's pretty common, especially for the mayor. If it could be dealt with in the contracting vehicle, I think that's a better way to do
well,
it.
it has to be once every 6 years.
Can I ask a quick question too? Is there a way of wrapping up this particular discussion?
That's
I don't know-
what
I
I
don't know what
was
else
going
we
to
have.
suggest. I was
Like,
going to.
do we want to send Dion and Aaron to come up with a contract so we can look at a contract with the lobbyists? Or I'm not that familiar with the process, frankly. I would probably like to learn a little bit more about
Yeah.
how they're hired and that kind of thing.
Okay.
And maybe get some more information and continue the discussion next time. That's just a
And
thought.
I can look through 2.35.
I was just going to say, bring up those
So-
code
I even
provisions.
brought the state.
Was that a motion to table till next
Yeah.
meeting?
And that was the other question I had too, is I forgot to ask him, I should have, is where did you get this language? Is this language from the state? Or did he make this up, or, I don't know.
Or he-
So let me
Yeah.
do some more homework for you.
Is that?
That's
is that-
fine, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe it's sole source contracts. Maybe that's.
It is,
the one.
it's
But I know that
undoubtedly
maybe
a
that's
sole
the
source.
distinction you could
Right.
make, that sole source versus
Right.
bidded
Right,
contracts. That would be, and so you say it's not just lobbyists, but it's not everyone's got a
Right.
contract, it's everyone who's got.
Well,
some
all
sort
sole
of-
source means is it doesn't go out to competitive bid.
Right.
Right,
I mean,
that's.
right,
that's-
so,
But
I'm
that's
not
where you would
sure.
have the biggest potential quid pro quo, right?
Right.
Because
Yes.
it's not a
Where you're
competitive
the-
process that
You're
buffers
absolutely
the
right, yeah.
elected
That's right.
official
You're
from
right.
the.
That's
Yes.
right.
yeah.
Okay.
That's true.
So did you want to make that in the motion to table?
Is that the correct term?
Postpone.
Postpone.
Second.
Okay, so I would move to postpone the particular issue to our
And I'll
next
second.
regular meeting.
And I'll second that.
Yeah.
Any opposed? Okay. Are we sure we've got back to 8C, update on respondent number 2, 2013-4,
This is an update?
that Ennis was going to
I did contact.
respondent number.
He had not turned in his paperwork. There was an inquiry, he hadn't responded to it. But he is resigning at the next meeting because he happens to be moving.
Oh.
So
So it's a moot
Rodman?
point.
This is
Yeah.
one
I'm
of
sorry.
those things where
Right.
procrastination just works, because as long as you put it off, things just.
but there could also
Yeah.
be resignation
Is that
because
sometimes you don't have to, your
we
problems
don't
do
want to
go away.
cooperate.
That's right. I hate it when it
But
works
could
out
I
that
also
way.
add here, I don't know if it's on our, that I also did talk to Therese Williams, who is the person who works for Maury Robinson. She's sort of the overall staff person for the LURSAs. And she will, she has agreed to do a similar thing to what Lisa did, that
Right.
form, that has everybody, she will send out after elections, so at this point in time, we'll send out to all the LURSA boards a request to fill this out. You have 30 days. And then she will follow up with them and I'll show her that spreadsheet you made, so they have agreed to that process.
So I did notice that one of the complainants actually ran for the
I
board.
did the same thing.
Yes.
Oh,
I didn't look who
and
won,
and
however.
And is
Yeah, and
winning,
won.
and won.
Yes.
So, but that means that somebody may
That's
need to be
interesting.
appointed
Yeah.
until the next election if he resigns,
No, okay, yeah, that could be.
which could potentially be the other person who ran, because it was an extra person who ran, because one of them was contested.
Yeah. I think there was like a total of 52 votes or something between the three of them or something like that. So if I remember right, less than 100. So.
Okay,
So that's 8C.
it's 8C
Okay.
1. We did 8C 2 already about discuss
Well, we
the form.
didn't, we just, this is a whole different form.
Oh, good Lord.
Do you
Really?
want to explain why we might need to look at a rewrite? Or,
On the, asking the assembly members, well, just as the current code says, if you file an APOC filing, you don't have to file that
Oh, right.
municipal form.
Which became a real hassle in the last couple of
And
weeks, yeah.
so we need to just do a one-liner and get to say, no, they have to file that as well, because the APOC form is so unhelpful. You weren't at the last meeting, Terry. The APOC form is 10 pages of every interest they've ever held, and I mean, it just goes on and on. It doesn't delineate municipal contracts and municipal interests, the things that we want to look at, that your wife has a job with, doing consulting work for Parks and Rec, that you would never even be able to figure that out from. And so we asked the Assembly to fill out these forms. There was some resistance why we already do APOC, and I said back to them, do you really want us to review your 10-page APOC filings? That we really just need these little forms.
Is that what this inserted language here is?
well, I put these citations down. These are for each of the entities appointed, elected, and employee, the code citation. And if you look on that second page, what keeps what D is talking about is the number 4 that's highlighted. And I don't know, is it as simple as removing number 4?
Where are you?
We're in 8C past the goldenrod.
Oh.
That's
That's
the
why- so that
one
was why they-
line.
That's
That
why
was
they
the
did want to
pushback.
fill it out.
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
pushback, that we
Oh.
don't have to.
Of course, now, what we're gonna have
Now, what's
to ask
this-
them, we're gonna have to ask them to remove this off our code. We're gonna ask them to say, you need to do more paperwork, so you need to remove it from our
Well,
code.
what's
but-
this underlined section here in the financial disclosure? Did you underline that for our benefit? Or?
Yeah, I just wanted to
Okay.
tell you for each thing, okay, for instance, for the first little paragraph, for a appointed person, the code says that you have to file that disclosure within 30 days of the appointment, okay? So if you're an elected official, it says you have to do it within 30 days of assuming office, and it's required by APOC, and then the little number 4 saying, and you don't have to do the annual supplement if you don't have any municipal disclosures. And then for municipal employees, it says within 30 days of hire. Okay, but if you go to the end where it talks about the forms from the clerk, this 1.15040, it says for this particular form, it has to be done within 30 days after coming within the scope of this chapter, so that's for each appointed, elected, and municipal employee, and then by February 15th of each year thereafter.
So
That's
there's a
where
conflict
we,
There's essentially a conflict in the code.
yeah,
Did
if
I- am I
you,
understanding you right?
if number 4,
Right.
yeah.
So what we're suggesting is simply eliminate number 4.
Well, I would argue that if they provide the specificity required on their APOC form, like we're asking here in the supplement, then they don't have to do the supplement. because it's
But-
already on the
Yeah,
APOC.
but
Can,
that's
Steve,
what
can
we're
I tell
saying.
you, it's 10 pages of disclosure.
I don't want to review it.
Yeah.
It's easier for us just to go.
No,
Oh,
no,
looks
no,
good.
no,
That's
no,
a
no.
motion
that's
second.
110 pages
That's
for the
probably why
assembly.
that was here, though.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it is,
Yeah.
but having looked
How
at an
many, 9
APOC
school
form
board
for one of
members?
them,
And there were 11 assembly members this time that just wrote none on a form, and that was
Right.
that literal. So why would we have wanted to go through 11 APOCs?
yeah, they're incredibly long.
So
I mean, every
it,
bank account,
it's more paperwork for them, but a lot less time for us.
and it's
Is
one
that-
piece
It's
of
one
paper.
piece
It's
of
one piece
paper.
of paper that they
Right.
basically say no.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it could be all kept in one place, which is nice. I don't know what the
Assuming-
clerk's office does with it, but yeah, it
At
just,
least they're on the
Somebody does that.
record for having said that, right?
So
That's
we
right.
can eliminate number 4,
right.
but we can't do that. We have
Oh,
to.
it'd be a code rewrite.
It has to get a code rewrite. Do we want to incorporate some other shopping list code rewrites that we've
Well,
discussed, such as adding the ombudsman
Ombudsman.
and a couple of the other things that we have on our shopping list?
You know, I would say if we want to make the shopping list, the simpler, the more likely it gets done. That this and that one could get done very quickly. That investigation one is tough. That the whole whether you accept a complaint or not, I think that really deserves time. We're going to go around and around on that. So my just recommendation, if you
understand.
want to get this done
It's kinda
quickly,
like
let's
doing-
just do those two.
It's kind of like getting a bond issue done, you know, you try to, you put what you really want and you put a whole bunch of other stuff in there that's not really controversial in there to get it done.
And now, do you all only want to tackle that issue, or as you can see from these citations, if you were to go and just read this one citation about a public appointed official, you would never know that, hey, oh, and I'm supposed to do it every year by the 15th. Because who goes and looks at the form section of the municipal clerk's duties?
Right, well, but don't we have the clerk's office also saying, here, just fill out these forms every year? They don't
Well,
have to know it.
Now,
Now.
Well, they weren't
This was
doing
the
it
first
in the
year, and it was
past,
like,
right.
and you wouldn't believe how many people I got emails. It took them just as much time to email me back and say, why do I have to do this? I've never had to
Yeah.
do this before.
Right, right.
And just doing
Sure.
it. So.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
do-
in
I
a
mean, we
previous
could add-
clerk's
The only
office-
reason I hesitate is because the least we have to do is the simpler. If we can just say, just get rid of 4, then maybe that's simpler. As opposed to going through, once we start fiddling with the wording, that'll take us 3 meetings and.
Well, then going forward, this is your task that you've given us to do this thing
Right.
by February 15th to make sure it gets
Right.
done. So going forward, it should get done.
Exactly, without,
And then people should get used to
without
it.
having to insert February 15 back
On everything.
earlier and
Okay,
earlier in the
okay.
paragraphs. That's my only thought,
Okay.
is to simplify this, because it really is a simple matter. It should be.
Okay. And then just a little bit more, if you look past there, the 3 forms are there. And I just started thinking about when people were filling out this form, this is another one of those where people are going, what do you want me to do? Should I put a box on here that puts none or the explanation, where you can just X a box that says none instead of me telling everybody, just write none if you have none? And do you want me to add code to this? I think there was one that had the code actually on the back so that people knew why they were being asked to do this.
I would put a block that says none.
Okay.
I like the way this first one here explains what AMC 1.15
Yeah.
110.g means.
So maybe do that on.
So they have that explanation, but then I guess what I was really thinking about was adding the filing requirement. You know, AMC, wherever that was, what they're within 30 days of coming into office and by the 15th of every. Just add a little blurb about the
you can
filing
almost do like you
requirement.
did on the second one.
That's
Except
already
that's
on the
gonna be
bottom of
different
this.
now.
That's already on the bottom of this page. On the municipal employees page.
Yeah, all of them are different. All 3 of them are different.
Is there any way you could? It would be easier for you if you had one form for everybody, or is it just too much?
Except that these different explanations I think are helpful for each entity. But if I could do the none box for each,
Yeah, and I would include the filing requirement, because that would prevent the emails back to you, why do I have to do this? You
Well,
could say,
if you read the bottom of the
read to the
page.
bottom of the form, and
Yeah.
you'll understand why you have to do that. Thank you for your
Yes,
inquiry. Because I think
Yeah,
that'd
that's
be
fine.
helpful. And maybe explain, on the second form, you reference the code.
And put in really small print at the bottom. Penalty for failing to do this.
Maybe explain that part of the code there.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you for getting
All
to
right,
that.
great.
Can we do D quickly?
Yeah.
We need to extend the meeting, right? If we go past 2.
By a motion, you want to motion it?
Well, I don't know if we're gonna do much after that anyways, but, do we need a motion to extend the meeting past 2 o'clock for another 20 minutes, 10 minutes?
Can't hurt, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, move to extend the meeting 15 minutes.
Second.
So moved. Any opposed? Well, nobody wants to speak up, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, D.
D is me, and I just haven't gotten to this opinion in this now.
Oh, we didn't need 15 minutes.
That's why I didn't say anything.
But I
No,
believe
because-
it's my only homework
Move to
left
adjourn.
undone.
Because E is me, and I'm working on the draft, but I'm not done.
You got F.
I think I'm still working on one of these.
Yeah, you're on the
That's your
draft
F.
ordinance.
Your F.
And as well as
My
D and Dr. Kelly for the generic rewrite of the letters.
I've been working on this for 8 months.
Dr. Kelly did the generic rewrite of the letter.
Well,
I'm
then
putting
why
on
is this,
the-
why is it still on
Is
the?
it G?
Because Nesbet hasn't done the draft ordinance.
Are you waiting on me to do something?
Yes.
Oh.
Kelly's draft is the first thing under
Am I
8F.
F?
8F,
Under what?
yes. 8F. You were going to ask this person if we could waive confidentiality.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
right.
And then Kelly did the draft of the generic letter, and it's the first thing under
Mm-hmm.
8F. And then David is going to rewrite the ordinance.
Maybe I should do that after our meeting. Oh, you know what? I have lots of notes on here.
You do.
Yes, and that's why you were asked to do that, because nobody could read your notes
Yeah. You have a minute, Lisa, after this meeting?
Mm-hmm.
after she gives me all the forms to sign.
Yeah, we got a lot of forms. Okay, and then we can't do the other ones will roll over.
Did you get the thing? I emailed you the other stuff too. The
You-
board
did
investigation
you?
stuff, including a flow chart of the board's
I did get it, but
investigation
let's
process.
before we go on, I
That's a
found
great
this.
one.
Look under HG. There is this 3-page thing here.
Yeah.
What is this?
Where did that come from?
I found this in our
Before my time.
G Drive. That's a process right there.
Oh, where'd this come from?
I found it
So,
in the G
You don't
Drive.
have to do that work, Terry. You've already started.
Well, it's
there.
nice to say after I spent all morning working on it.
Yeah, but maybe
Yes.
Terry, you review this one to see.
No,
Does that mean
no,
I-
Yeah, I mean,
no,
and
it's
try
helpful.
to
No,
mesh
no,
the two together.
for sure.
Yeah, it sure seems good.
So I have to do my work now. I've been waiting on you forever.
I mean, this looks pretty
I have to do a
detailed.
checklist or something. Right?
Yep, from the procedure, you can
Yeah.
start looking at that list there.
So can I put you down for meshing?
I'll mesh, but if you could, I'll forward
this
my
is
thing on
excellent.
to you. But I worked on that this morning and came up
Could
with
you
a flow
send
chart.
G
that-
to both of them so that they?
Yes. Again.
So do I
No,
give you
so
your-
they had an electronic copy, because was that in the email?
Mhm.
Okay, because I didn't look at anything that didn't have my name on it, or the.
I just sort of came across this one day and thought, what is this? Isn't this what we're working on?
Great.
And I didn't look at it. but
Well, and that might be something we can put on the website at some point.
the process.
So that the public members of those that, the complainants can know, okay, this is what we do.
So we only send it to one person.
When you said that, I have this little image in my mind that I think that we're probably supposed to have it on the website. For some reason, that popped into my brain that this process is supposed to be published.
Okay, so are we done with 8 for now? Not hearing any objection. Any
Yeah, I mean, everything will roll over.
other
right?
report, just anything else, member comments? We've all spoken enough. There's no audience at this particular point. So we need one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
To move and second to adjourn. Any opposed? No, and we're early. We're out by 7 after.